Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's a little late in the evening. It's about 6:30 before I'm getting a chance to do this. I traded through about lunchtime and had to leave and came back in. I was really surprised to see this rally when I came back. I thought we were gonna, you know, we almost traded to 1800 anyway, but this has been one crazy, crazy day. I mean, yesterday afternoon we were at 1890 something, and so we sold off. Let's just look and see. I'm really curious. The high of the overnight yesterday was 83, and the low was 1813. So that's 70 points in one day. Wow. I mean, the last time, and I'll tell you, the last time I remember having this much volume and this much volatility was the huge bear market in '08. When we had the big sell off and it scared everybody to death and everybody thought the market was going to go down forever, and then we had the biggest rally. And so when it's selling off like that as day traders, all we're worried about is movement. So we don't really care if it's selling off or rallying, as long as it's moving and we get a chance to make money. I would rather see it rally to the upside than the down, because I have other investments too, and I hate to see them take a hit, which they will in a market like this. But all you do is wait till it gets to a value and start buying up some more of it a little bit at a time. And it won't be long that it'll come back. It always does. I mean, one of these days it may not, and that's the chance you take, but it always has. And I'm guessing it always will come back. You can't guess exactly when you're going to find the bottom, but if you're buying stocks, just start nibbling away when it's had a good sell-off, when you think it's found the bottom. And people ask me about averaging down. Never average down day trading. That is the biggest mistake you could ever make. So don't average down day trading. But if you're buying for the long term, there's nothing wrong with averaging down, because every time you get a better price, just make sure you're buying good stocks from solid companies that aren't going out of business, that aren't going anywhere, that pay dividends, that are going to come back. They always do. And so, but anyway, that's not what this is about. Just kind of getting off on a tangent there. But really, the last time I remember seeing this kind of volume and volatility was during that big sell-off back in '08. I believe it was '08, early '08 started. It was about the same time the housing crash hit and all that. I can remember shorting some of those or selling some puts on a lot of those builders in the housing market, and I made some real money on those. So there's always something like that going on when you know, even when the market's going down. So be aware of that. Will it be, who knows what it'll be this next time? It'll be something of that nature. But anyway, I had to back so far out just to get it all in here today that you can't even see it. Just looks like a solid line almost. So, but I wanted to back out and show you the big picture. There's a larger two-tiered channel. Uh, but it really helps to draw these shorter term ones. They keep you, on the right track, and they're working out like just exactly like you would expect. You get your break and new highs, and they pretty much, you may not know exactly when it's going to reverse, but wait till you get your something, confirmed going in the other direction before you start trading again. But you really don't need the bigger picture. But if you see the bigger picture, it certainly helps. And somebody actually posted on our website today, how do I find those lines so quickly? How they can't seem to do it. But it's just experience. And with more experience, I mean, I can glance at this chart and see the lines without even drawing them. I mean, but I look at this thing every day for years and years and years. And, it's like anything, the more you do it, you kind of get better. And I always liken it to I mean, most people, even if you aren't in the real estate investment, you've heard the old saying, what are the three rules of real estate? And they're location, location, location. If you buy the right location, you can't hardly go wrong. Well, in trading, the three rules, there's more to it than that, but, my three rules, I always use it. I always kind of mock or, you know, copy the old real estate. The three rules are experience, experience, experience. And when you get enough experience, you'll know what I'm talking about. So, but anyway, let's don't get off on a tangent. My phone's gonna ring off the hook. I cannot get here and sit down and try to do a chart lesson without everybody calling me. And this is even late in the evening, so I apologize. But my phone is just gonna ring off the hook. Um, but anyway, let me back out here, go over the trades again. I only marked the trades through a little past lunch, and I mean, you don't need any more than that. So I'm not even gonna waste time trying to show you the whole day. We don't have time. Yesterday, I think the chart lesson was 42 minutes, and we just don't have time to do them all. There's so many trades and so much going on that, and here's some areas in here where you can see the bigger midline overtook this channel right here. And so it does come into play. So if you can find it, it certainly helps. But let's talk about the trades. Early on, this was really simple. You draw it off the first two swings, and it worked all day, and or till it reversed anyway. And then you just copy it and drag it down, and you find it bound. And look, I mean, there's no doubt that's a perfect channel, easy to find. There's lots of trades in here, and this is all you needed to make all the money you could ever make and be done by. If you came in at 7, you could be done by 8:30 and make all the money you could ever stand right there on that little piece. That's all you need. I mean, that's generally a whole day's worth right there. And that's basically 2 hours, 7 to 9 a.m., 30 minutes into the open. And that's generally a whole day's worth of price action right there. It's amazing. It really, and look, that's just the start. Look, it just keeps going and going and going and going and going and going and going. And there's that line up and down. It's kind of faint probably for you guys, but that's it. And that's the close. But it's just, I mean, it's 3 or 4 days worth of prices in one day. It doesn't get any better than that. I mean, I'm about to the point where I say, hey, I might just stay around here all day and get my whole week's worth in a day or two and take off this week or something, But if you get greedy, you know what happens. So I hate to get greedy. I like to do my thing and be done, and but now you can be done by 8:30 instead of having to wait till lunch to get that many trades. You can get that many in an hour or two and be done. But anyway, let's talk about them and wrap this thing up. And because I'm already late, it's almost 7 o'clock. People are probably wondering where this chart lesson is, but it'll be there shortly. I guess I'm talking to myself saying that, but let's talk about the trades. Okay, first trade I saw was right at 7 o'clock. You may not have been here this early. It happened before I got in here as well, so I couldn't take this trade, but it's a nice setup. This is a very obvious channel, real easy to find, and notice we bounce, then we try to go higher once, and we tested it again, and it's right off that midline, right off the EMA, and it broke higher and then turned down. Just go short right there. You figure it's going to test that low again. It does. It tested a couple more times, and then it rallies and goes right back up to the trend line. Go short right there. Look at that. There's a new low, pull back, first entry, pull back. It's a second entry short. It's coming right off the trend line. It's not the most perfect bar, but you're not getting there. The bars are so big lately that they're not perfect. Try a limit order if you want. You may get left behind, and look at that thing go. And when it pushes that low, you probably figure you're going to go all the way down. And there's a little trend line there. I don't have it on there, but it's there. I can, you don't even need to draw it to see it. And it bounces right there into the trend line, into the midline, into that midline. It's like a little breakout, pull back short, and then it goes short again. And where does it bounce? Right off the lower trend line. You could have exited there, if you want to see if you can catch a big runner. You might hang on, but you could have got another point or so before it rallied. And on this rally, you're looking for it to come back to this line. But it doesn't get there. And if you didn't have this midline in here, you would be wondering why it didn't get there. And you may not have had that midline in there. I actually had this line just drawn right across there, and I thought it was maybe a bigger channel. But when we went through there and came back and tested it, then you got to assume that it's a midline. And I think it's a little higher than that in the end once you find this side of it. But at the time, I had it just running off these lows right down through here. So Um, but I think it's right in there. But no matter where you had it, still you tested it once, you tested it again, and look at that big bearish bar. Just go short right there. Another nice move down, and you could have ridden this one for a long time if you want to. And then there's a little trend line. There's a trend line here too. I don't have these on there. I wish I'd have put them on. That's how I would have drawn that one. It's possible that there's something right here maybe. That looks pretty good right there too. So get a little close out down here. But you wouldn't have been able to find that really. Well, you might have drawn it off the top and got it before it came back down here. Actually, this would have already been here. I actually probably would have drawn it right up through there first, and you would have given you the same break and a new high and then a lower high. So there's some other ways you might have got to that, but that's a nice bearish bar. And you can see this one's real obvious here. It might even be just a tad flatter. Play with it till you get it right and it fits on both sides, and you get your break, move to a new high. I don't know if you quite make a new high there. Let's make this a little bigger. But you can't because of this trend line working down. And you actually get a close outside right here. It's not much of one, but it's there. And let's just see if that's a new high. I think it's just a double top. But you understand why you can't get it, because it can't get through the bigger trend line right there. And you've also got a double top right here, and it's just a retest of that double top. And look at that big bearish bar. It's going short very close to the low there, but under the circumstances, you might use a limit order and try to get a tick or two back in, and you could have, and then it just takes off and this thing you can just ride it all the way to the bottom. When this thing starts rallying out here like this, you better exit and take what you got. Don't give it all back, because that is a huge rally bar. And of course, if you measured these moves, you know about where it's going to bounce, and you've got this line just sitting down there waiting. But it doesn't matter. It bounced off this line, and it's close enough here to you've got to close outside of it, and then it reverses. And this is the thing in these bear sell-offs, is that you get these huge reversals. And we talked about that, and this thing's just rocketing off here. Maybe this line is a little higher, because there's something going on right up through there. Maybe it's just a spiking channel. I'm thinking that's what it is. It's just a spike. There's not a midline there. This is just a spike and a channel. And you get your break, move to a new high, and then guess what? It's headed the other direction. But this is not uncommon to get these spiking channels like this. And had I drawn it like that, I would have been more apt to take more of these trades up through here, especially there's a trap right here and you weren't back to the top. But I didn't see that till just now for whatever reason. But I like that trade right there. Of course, it's after the fact, and maybe that's why I'm seeing it now. It's easier to see it after the fact. But notice that move up, first entry, pull back, second entry, it fails, and it goes out the bottom, then goes out the top. Turned out to be a nice trade. And you don't really get any more. That's just a hard one to catch, because it's been a huge down sell, and what it is, they're just hitting stops and they'll keep running it. And I did like this one, but I thought it was a break of our bigger trend line, or really right on that trend line earlier the way I had it drawn. But I don't think that was right looking back at it. So it doesn't matter. I mean, if you pull it down there, it's still there, and you can't ignore that. So it's still something to consider, and that was why I liked that. But looking at it either way, it's the first, and that's a pretty big sell-off. But it was way overdone, and time to come back to the EMA. But I think you should use a limit order here, and you could have gotten filled right at it or tick back, and then it takes off. And then you get another opportunity here, but that was based off of this line being here and that being the first break. Um, there's still a trap. Notice it you get a first entry long pullback. There's a second entry long. It looks like it's going to be a failed second entry long, and it breaks lower. And I know it trapped people short there, and then it turns up. So it's a nice bullish bar. Go long there. Turns out to be a pretty good trade. Once it turns back down with a lower high there, I didn't like anything else. I think you're looking for it to start reversing now. And had I drawn it like this, I might have looked at that one even differently, to be honest with you. And this is where it gets kind of, it's kind of chopping around here, and you finally make a lower low and a lower high, and it was really tempting to go short there, but you probably wouldn't have. You could have drawn this line right here, but I don't think I would have trusted that to go short. But when it pulls back and it confirms the trend line, your first two swings set it up. The third one kind of confirms it. That's a real bearish bar. Even the dojis, it closes near its low, but I think you were better to wait on that one. And it breaks lower. It gives you a chance to get in with a limit order. But I'll be honest, I think you just have to go short on that bearish bar with a stop. And you had to ride that out a little bit. But then it drops on off like a rock. Just rockets on. Hits the bottom. It makes one more little push and traps some people. And then comes up. And then you get a nice bearish. That's your first break and a nice bearish bar. And there's really two legs up there. There's a little correction there. It bounces off the midline. So I like going short right there. And there it goes again. You did get your close outside there. You got your new low. And they almost always pull it back again and make and trap some people. Look how they did it right there and then bounced it. Right here you made the low. And one more little move and then it traps people. And then it did it right here, just moves and traps people, and then it moves a little lower and traps people. They love to do that, and then it just rockets off to the other side because they know that the market's jittery and people get scared and they realize they made a mistake and they all run for the door and it just runs up that much faster. And now you had your break and a new low, and you just about these are supposed to be blue. And this one was really supposed to be green. It's a long trade. You're coming down. You got a second entry there, but you weren't back down to these lower bars. You might have looked at it right there, but I think what it was, there's just a midline, and I think your trend line's way down here. And that's a big reversal bar, and you got to be careful with those because they like to trap you. But really the trade that I liked was when it turned down right there and broke lower and turned back up. It's really going long right here, although this has still got to be your signal bar. It's a huge bar. It's really hard to get in that. You might have let that break higher and then use the limit order, but I think it's risky to go long then, but when you get that little break lower and it turns and goes right out the other side, I like that to try to get long there. And you got just enough really if you got in with a limit order, you had more than enough, of course, and then it turns back down and it makes a double bottom, but it's much higher than that last low. So that's like your two test, and look at that bullish bar, and then people feel real comfortable, and that's why it rockets up like that. But this is what I was saying. We're not getting back down to this midline, and so there's a good chance we're probably going to break the bigger trend. So that's why I'm saying if you just draw these shorter term ones, they work out a little better. And you can see then you get your break here, move to a new high, and then it's rocketing the other way. This is another spike in channel with a two-tiered channel. And there's a possibility of getting short down through here, but I just don't really like him. You might have thought about getting short there, but there's not much room back to here. And you see it did bounce even though it pushed on lower. And then it comes back up, and now you've had your break and a new low, so you could there's a lot of support right across here, so you got to be real careful. I probably should draw that line. It's not that obvious until you draw the line, and that's why I always tell y'all draw your line, and then I don't have mine on here. Probably get the most touches. That looks like kind of the swing point. So you can see that strong support. So you got to be careful going short right in there. And this one maybe I'll draw that one green. If you were paying attention and really still trading, you might want that one. But I don't see any way to really get in that one. I think it's too risky, even though it keeps moving. But that's the thing. It tricks you into getting in, and then it bounces. You'll watch it move, 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 and you'll say, well, next time I'm getting in, and it does something similar right here, and you get in, and it rockets back. But you got to know where these lines are. And you might have originally had this one right across here. And if you did, that might have made you more apt to go short right in there and that one. But I really think in the end it's right up here, like so. And you can see how it came into play all the way down through here. You can see the nice measured distance between the midline there. So I really like it. But when it failed to go higher there and turn back down, you figure you're going to test that low right here. So I like that one. There are a couple of dojis overlapping there. But notice the first entry pullback, it's a second entry, and it did break higher there and then go down. So it closed almost on its very low, one tick off of it. Even though it looks somewhat like a doji, it's pretty bearish, and off it goes. And then we come back to the upside. I don't think you want to go the first entry, but it pulls back. You get a second entry here, and you might have even thought about using a limit order here. If you missed it, it came back and it gave you a chance, and that's what this thing, it gives you a lot of second chances. It didn't quite get to the trend line, but you probably would have had it a little lower, and maybe it did get there if you draw it like that, and you still don't have any closes outside, so that's probably okay. Maybe this is just a little lower. Yeah, it fits pretty good. So sometimes when you back out a little more and adjust it some, you can see these things. And it was tempting to say enter here, but I think it was a little risky. But then when you get the first entry, pull back, second entry long, and it fails, and you get that big bearish bar, just go short. You figure you're coming down here now. And I thought it'd probably go right on down, but it backs up. And there's actually a second entry, a little failed second entry long that's a trap, so you might have even thought about going short right there. You don't have a lot of room, but I think it would have worked. So I'm not even 35. Entry would have been 35. Oh, it easily worked. I'm gonna go ahead and draw that one green. It's not the best entry, and when you're getting so many setups, you don't want to take marginal ones or even really aggressive ones, because if you just wait, you'll get a really good setup in just a few minutes. And look, just a few minutes later, this one set up around a little after 11. Well, if you just waited 15 or 20 minutes, you get a much better setup over here. Notice it's a pull back, first entry, it's a second entry short with a bearish bar right off the trend line. Much better setup. Takes it a few minutes to get going, and you didn't get any runners, but it gives you another chance right here. And again, you probably didn't get any runners there, though. That's the sad thing about it. There's actually a failed second. It never ticked higher. That's the reason I didn't mark that one. This was the failed second entry long, and it actually is a new swing high because it went higher than that one. So you could almost treat that like it tried to go higher once, twice. So but it's so close to the midline that it could bounce and come back. So, I just didn't like that. And you only got a first entry here. You didn't get back to this line. It didn't bounce off the midline. This thing's really bearish, though. But if you just wait, and then all of a sudden you get a second entry short there, easy scalp. And then it pulls back, and you get, this is what I really like this one. It doesn't look real pretty, but it's right off the trend line. And look at that little bitty doji. First trade you can get in with hardly any risk at all day, and look how it pays off. Boom! Look at that move, and and your runners are safe here, easy. and then you get a little pull back to the midline. It's headed lower again. You don't know that it's going to keep going. You're looking for it just to come down to this line, but that thing just keeps on going. And you could have ridden a runner all the way down. And then once it broke below, I didn't like going short in here. I thought it was too risky because it was going to, if it bounces, it's going to take off like it did here. And, I thought that was a lie. I didn't even mark anything else. There's, like I said, there's more trading before noon than you normally get in 2 or 3 days combined. But look at this going up. Real easy to read again. Not very difficult to find. And this is a midline. I didn't make it lighter. Just all day long. It's real easy. And there's short-term moves in there if you draw them. It's not that difficult to find the channels. They're real clear lately. The first couple of days of this stuff, they weren't that clear, and there was a lot of reversals. It was more rangy looking, but it's been really simple. These are all pretty clear except for maybe this one. This early one right here, right after the open, that rallied up. There's just a couple different ways to see it. I don't think you could go wrong looking at it like that and drawing the midline the way I did. And I may have been right there to begin with, because you do see it just was so strong, and this line kept it from getting back there, and it went right through there. So that's probably still right. The more I look at that, that's probably still right. But there's no doubt there's something going on right there too. So I guess you could have looked at it either way, but looking back and putting that back the way I originally had it, I think I was right. I think that that everything fits right there. You can see the midline coming into play there. You notice how it gapped, it kind of shot through, and there's that little gap. It may be just a tad lower, like so. And then this is just a tad lower. And it all fits in there really nicely. So that's probably what it is. This is probably a little bit lower right here, and you just got some overshoots. Now that's it right there, no doubt about it. That makes sense now. What was happening, the market was so strong that we were just overshooting it a little bit, and that's what was causing it to. It's still working higher, but it's kind of working off of the upper channel trend line. It's fighting that trend line. So that, and you can see that little gap right there, and there's one right there. Yeah, that makes sense now. So there's usually, if you got time to play with it and look at it, usually figure it out. You may not have had much time while it's traveling up through there. So, but I found it when it was working up through there. I just, if you move this higher, it still fits, and so it's there. Sometimes it's not as clear as other times, but most of them have been very, very clear, easy to spot. So, but anyway, this is 30 minutes worth, and we didn't even work through noon. So, literally, you could have worked till about 8:30 today, and you had a whole day's worth of trading and setups in an hour and a half. So, this is some wonderful trading. I hate to see the market selling off like that, but I'm not going to complain about the opportunity. So as fast as it goes down, it can always go back that fast as well. So, but it wasn't very long ago we were at 2,000, and earlier in this morning we were down here at almost 1,800, 2,000 points off our high in a very short period of time. So that is one thing. Is when you do get sell-offs, a lot of times it moves a lot faster to the downside than it does the upside. So there's pros and cons to all of it. So, but anyway, I'm going to wrap it up for the day. I hope you're having a good trading day and a good week, and we'll be back again to do it tomorrow. This is Matt with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you.